हाँ, एरो की से ना कीबोर्ड से काम होगा.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Sorry for the delay. This is Dr. Syed Muhammad Hassan, and I am assistant professor at National Institute of Diabetes and Endocrinology, DIMC. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic in endocrinology. This is causes, clinical features, diagnosis, and management of Addison disease. So, without any further delay, it's not going to be a very lengthy lecture, inshallah, but you need to remember that this is a very serious and important endocrine problem, because without good understanding of this topic, you may lose a patient in the ER. So, pathophysiology and etiology. Primarily, the issue is that there is the entire adrenal cortex that is destroyed, that leads to the deficiency of glucocorticoid, mineralocorticoid, and sex steroid hormones. These all hormones are reduced if there is a destruction of entire adrenal cortex. And there is a difference between the primary and secondary causes of Addison disease or hypocortisolism. Hypothalamic pituitary disease leads to actually deficiency of ACTH. In that case, mineralocorticoid axis is intact, because this is primarily under the control of angiotensin 2. Adrenal sex steroids production is also largely independent of pituitary action. So this is also controlled by gonadotropin. But whenever there is a primary destruction of the adrenal cortex, these all hormones are deficient. So hypothalamic pituitary disease actually leads to the deficiency of ACTH, or it can lead to deficiency of gonadotropin like LH and FSH. So there's usually a selective deficiency of few of the hormones, and then it is manifested by the deficiency of the secondary target organ, target gland deficiency hormone. This illustration shows actually this is anterior pituitary, this is posterior pituitary, this is stalk, and from the hypothalamus there is a release of corticotropin releasing hormone that leads to the secretion of ACTH, and then ACTH stimulates adrenal glands to secrete cortisol. And what happens is that whenever there is destruction of the adrenal gland, this cortisol is lost. So the negative feedback inhibition of ACTH, sorry, this negative feedback deficiency of cortisol, this negative feedback inhibition of ACTH from the anterior pituitary and from the hypothalamus, the release of CRH is further stimulated whenever there is loss of cortisol from the adrenal gland. And ACTH stimulates melanocortin. So there is hyperpigmentation in case of primary deficiency of the cortisol from the adrenal glands, which is the feature of Addison disease, which we are going to discuss shortly. So I hope you can understand this. And there is a trend of this hormone secretion. There is a circadian rhythm. What happens is that in the daylight, in the morning, since you see the sunlight and the light all around you, so there's a visual stimulation from the eyes. The message goes inside the brain, and then this circadian rhythm is actually excited and started. And then there is a release of CRH and then ACTH, and the cortisol hormone is secreted from the adrenal gland in the morning more, and it is reduced, and secretion is almost negligible in the night time. मुझे वापस लाके देना, मुझे वापस लाके देना, अच्छा बंद कर देना. So the other thing is that it is a rare disorder, but it's rare in the sense that not every patient comes to you with this problem in the ER or in your OPD, but it is an important diagnosis to be missed. So there's incidence of 3 to 4 per million per year, and prevalence is almost 40 to 60 per million. You can imagine this is a very scanty number, but if you miss a diagnosis, it's a potential diagnosis and you can miss a patient. You can lose a patient. So primary hypoadrenalism shows a marked female preponderance and is most often caused by autoimmune disease. Now, this autoimmune disease actually is in the Western Hemisphere. For us, we have a very important cause of tuberculosis, which is the increasing cause. And since they have HIV and AIDS, although it is being controlled in the Western Hemisphere as well, but because there is opportunistic infection in AIDS, so tuberculosis is one of them. So it is also seen in the Western Hemisphere caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis infiltration and destruction of the adrenal gland. So tuberculosis is very important in our setup and autoimmune in the Western Hemisphere. Since we have the literature from the UK, so more than 90% causes of hypoadrenalism in the UK is caused by autoimmunity. So autoimmune adrenalitis results from the destruction of the adrenal cortex by organ-specific autoantibodies. The antigen against which the antibody is formed is 21-hydroxylase enzyme. So whenever there is antibody formed against this, so cortisol is not formed and the adrenal gland undergoes inflammation and then destruction. Other autoimmune conditions are also associated with Addison disease, and these are type 1 diabetes. It can be pernicious anemia or thyroiditis. It can even lead to hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, hypoparathyroidism, and premature ovarian failure. So any of the combination can be found. When one autoimmune disease is there, other is always anticipated. This is the list of causes that leads to hypocortisolism or Addison disease. As you know, autoimmune phenomenon is more common in the Western Hemisphere and the UK. Infections like tuberculosis and fungal infection like cryptococcosis, HIV, histoplasmosis, these are all infiltrative diseases that leads to destruction of the adrenal gland. A very, very important cause is surgical removal. Someone undergoes nephrectomy or someone undergoes removal of tumor of the adrenal gland, which is very, very rare. Or ketoconazole, this is antifungal drug given systemically, can also inhibit cortisol synthesis. Mitairapone, someone is given for Cushing disease that we will discuss. You will have lecture on that. So it also leads to iatrogenic cause of hypocortisolism. Other iatrogenic, very important cause is the therapeutic use of corticosteroids for diseases like asthma or inflammatory bowel disease or joint diseases. When you give someone for a very prolonged period of time the corticosteroids like prednisolone or hydrocortisone, that also leads to suppression of this ACTH, and then it leads to deficiency of cortisol hormone. In case of meningococcemia like septicemia, it results in Waterhouse Friderichsen syndrome when there is hemorrhagic destruction of the adrenal gland. Infiltrative diseases like amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, hemochromatosis can also lead to Addison disease. Malignancy, it is very rare to get Addison disease as a result of malignant infiltration of the adrenal glands. And there are congenital defects like congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and then a specific deficiency of the ACTH or glucocorticoid resistance. Other rare causes are adrenoleukodystrophy, where there is neurodegenerative symptoms, and sometimes there is venography that leads to destruction of the adrenal gland. So this is the list of different causes. There are common causes, there are rare causes, but remember the disease is not very common, but the TB, of course, is common. So you can anticipate someone coming to your OPD or your ER services when they have hypotension and they have severe prostration. They may have hypoglycemia. They may have other features like these. The symptomatology of Addison disease can be vague and non-specific. Someone coming to severe prostration, lethargy, weight loss, lack of appetite, low-grade fever, abdominal pain, hypotension, especially postural hypotension, And these are and then hyperpigmentation or increased slate gray pigmentation of the skin and creases of the palm or the this is the umbilicus, and different skin folds if they have hyperpigmentation. With these sort of symptomatology, you should anticipate that patient should be screened and managed for Addison disease. Other thing is that patient is severely dehydrated, and then there's hyperpigmentation, is the prominent sign in over 90% of cases. Postural systolic hypotension due to hypovolemia and sodium loss is present in 80 to 90% cases, even if supine blood pressure is normal. Mineralocorticoid deficiency is the cause of hypotension. So you should also anticipate that the destruction of the adrenal gland is complete, because it also includes mineralocorticoid deficiency. So you can look at this lady that she has slate gray complexion, very sallow complexion, and looks, I mean, maybe she might have increased body weight, but now she looks very low. And then you can see these sallow complexion and then increased pigmentation of the skin creases, sorry, as compared to this palm. And then there's pigmentation, patchy pigmentation of the oral mucosa. So you should also ask the patient to open the mouth and look into the oral cavity. So these are the important clinical features. Remember that, as I mentioned earlier, I will hammer this and stress on this issue that clinical suspicion and your knowledge is very important, because if you only see what you know. So if you have someone in your clinical practice coming to you with vague symptoms, and then you have people with the weight loss, and they may have hypoglycemia, they may have low mood, they may have depression. So along with that, if you see that they have hypotension, always screen a person for hypocortisolism, because it's a potentially treatable cause, and it requires lifelong replacement of the corticosteroids. So once the Addison's disease is suspected, investigation is urgent. If the patient is seriously ill or hypotensive, hydrocortisone 100 mg should be given intravenously or intramuscularly immediately, together with normal saline infusion. Ideally, this should be done immediately after a blood sample. Now, remember, while you are giving patient treatment, you need to take the sample to screen for plasma cortisol. Because if you will not take the sample of blood to check cortisol, you will miss a potential diagnosis, because once you have given hydrocortisone, you cannot screen, because hydrocortisone will be actually checked in the laboratory sample. So while you are giving this treatment, you have to take the blood sample, and it will not take more than a minute. So alternatively, an ACTH stimulation test is very important, that can be performed immediately. Full investigation should be delayed until emergency treatment has improved the patient condition. So you need to stabilize the patient initially, resuscitate the patient, but while you are doing so, you have to take the sample for cortisol. Now, there is an important catch here. Single cortisol measurement are of little value, but if while a patient has a stress, while a patient has got these symptoms of hypotension and low mood and weight loss, and patient has got some infection or some trauma or surgery, and patient is looking sick, you have taken the sample for cortisol and it is below 100 nanomoles per liter, that means it is suggestive of hypocortisolism, because you are expecting that while the patient has got stress of some trauma or surgery or some accident, patient should have a high cortisol. And when a patient is unable to incite high cortisol, you expect that patient has got a low cortisol secretion while the patient has got stress. So this is highly suggestive of hypocortisolism. And a random cortisol more than 550 nanomoles makes the diagnosis very unlikely. So you can think of other causes. Maybe patient is hypovolemic, patient has got diarrhea, vomiting, etc. So you can expect that the features of such a patient are secondary to some other cause, not because of hypocortisolism. So if the value is more than 550 nanomoles, then the diagnosis is unlikely. A very important test is short ACTH stimulation test. Note that an absent or impaired cortisol response confirms the presence of hypoadrenalism but does not differentiate Addison disease from ACTH deficiency or iatrogenic suppression. Now, what is the meaning of this statement? Someone has got these symptoms and you are expecting that patient will have low cortisol. So you have to give synthetic ACTH. This is going to stimulate adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol. Now, if cortisol secretion is insufficient or inadequate, then you can diagnose patient with Addison disease. But it is not going to differentiate whether the deficiency of cortisol is secondary to the primary adrenal gland destruction or it is from the ACTH deficiency from the anterior pituitary. Or this is because of the suppression of cortisol or ACTH by the iatrogenic suppression of steroid medication. So it is not going to differentiate. For this, literature will give you an information that there is another test called long ACTH suppression stimulation test, which is no longer done. So you are going to do this in the morning. It's ideally at 900 hours. You are going to take a sample of ACTH along with cortisol. It is called as paired cortisol with ACTH. So in primary adrenal failure, ACTH is high and there will be low or low normal cortisol. Short Sinutin test, the indication is you have to confirm the diagnosis of Addison disease and a screening test for ACTH deficiency. The procedure is that you maintain an IV cannula for sampling. You can do it any time of the day, but ideally can be done in the morning in a non-fasting state. Sorry. The molecule is known as tetracycline or synthetic ACTH, also known as synectin. This is the dose is 250 microgram IV or intramuscularly at time 0, and then measure cortisol after 30 minutes and 60 minutes. So normal response once you have given synthetic ACTH is more than 600 nanomoles, and below 600 up to 400 is the borderline and may indicate deficiency. As far as other tests are concerned, electrolytes and urea is done. It is going to show hyponatremia. It may be show hyperkalemia and high urea because of dehydration. Patient may have hypoglycemia if you check the blood glucose level. Adrenal antibodies are not routinely done in Pakistan. They are available as some higher centers. In case of autoimmune destruction of the adrenal gland, 90% cases show positive antibody test. If you do a chest X-ray or abdominal plane X-ray, you will find out that there might be evidence of tuberculosis in the chest X-ray, or there could be hypercalcification or calcification of the adrenal gland from the old infection or destruction of the adrenal gland. Plasma renin will be raised because of the hypovolemic state, and there will be low serum aldosterone if there will be primary adrenal gland destruction. Because of the poor renal clearance of calcium, there may be hypercalcemia, and of course, anemia of chronic illness, which is normochromic normocytic anemia, could be another finding in the lab results. Sometimes there is increased eosinophil count. So this is another finding that you can come across because there could be some allergic element, but usually this is not for the diagnosis. It's just a supportive evidence. This is the abdominal CT scan, and you can see this bilateral calcification in the area of adrenal gland. These are the kidneys, and this is calcification in the superior pole of the kidneys in the area of adrenal glands. So, how to manage such a case? Now, assuming normal cardiovascular function, the following are required. Now, why I am saying assuming? Because you do expect that this patient did not have any cardiac event, because you are going to load him with fluid. He initially needs to be given IV normal saline in 30 to 60 minutes, 1 liter at least, along with 100 milligram of hydrocortisone IV bolus. This is the first thing that you have to do after taking the blood sample for the cortisol. Subsequent requirements are several liters of saline within 24 hours, assessing with the central venous pressure line if necessary. Remember, you cannot you cannot load the person with IV fluid without knowing the CVP in ICU or HDU setting. Further, that you have to check whether there is volume overload. You need to auscultate the chest, check the saturation of the person, so that you don't overload the patient with fluid and don't end up with congestive cardiac failure. That's why it's written assuming normal cardiovascular function. And then you will continue giving hydrocortisone 100 milligram IV or intramuscularly 6 hourly or 8 hourly as the patient stabilizes. Glucose should be checked, and if person has got hypoglycemia, you have to give dextrose water. Oral replacement of the hydrocortisone or corticosteroid is started once the patient is able to take orally, because these patients are very weak and very friable, very fragile, and they might be throwing out, they might be vomiting, and they are not able to take medicine orally. So once the patient is stabilized, able to tolerate oral diet and oral medication, then you are going to start oral medication of hydrocortisone 20 milligram 8 hourly, reducing to 20 to 30 milligram in divided doses over next few days. So you have to gently titrate the dose according to the patient's cortisol level. Other element is aldosterone, that is also deficient in primary hypoadrenalism, and in that case, fludrocortisone is also added in the treatment, but because of a very high dose of hydrocortisone, that is sufficient to replace mineral corticoid element also. So initial treatment may not require fludrocortisone. This is mineral corticoid medication. It is unnecessarily acutely, as the high cortisol doses provide sufficient mineral corticoid activity, and it should be introduced later. So long-term treatment is with replacement corticosteroids and mineral corticoid if required. Tuberculosis must be treated if present or suspected. Now, remember that primary adrenal failure also involves adrenal androgens, and one of the adrenal androgens is dehydroepiandrosterone. Although this is not given here in our setup in Pakistan, but it is over the counter available in US and UK. So replacing this hormone in literature also mentioned that it provides some feeling of well-being, but this is not so crucial to for the treatment of Addison disease. So different options that we have: hydrocortisone, if available, it is given 20 to 30 milligram daily. You can give 10 milligram on waking. Remember the circadian rhythm, higher hydrocortisone is required in the morning hours at 900 hours, and 5 milligram at midday, and 5 milligram at 6 p.m. Or prednisolone can be given 7.5 milligram total daily dose. 5 milligram can be given on waking, and 2.5 milligram at 6 p.m. So you have to give a small dose in the evening and higher dose in the morning. Similarly, a longer acting, more potent dexamethasone is rarely required if you don't have any of these choices, by the dose of 0.75 milligram, because it is very potent, and it is given a smaller dose, and given 0.5 milligram on waking and 0.25 milligram at 6 p.m. When you replace these corticosteroids and you still find that patient has got some hypotension, you will give fludrocortisone 0.05 milligram or 50 microgram to 300 microgram daily. Now, I have added this slide deliberately because you should remember, sometimes you are asked in your exam, what is the equivalence of different corticosteroids available that you will give. So remember, if you are choosing cortisol or hydrocortisone, the mineral corticoid effect and glucocorticoid effect are equal. Prednisolone has 4 times more potent than hydrocortisone, and the effect of glucocorticoid is 4 times higher than the hydrocortisone, and dexamethasone is 40 times more potent than hydrocortisone, and that is why the dose is so small. But its mineral corticoid effect is much lesser. It's 2 times, right? Whereas aldosterone, which is a pure mineral corticoid, is 0.1 times potency of as compared to hydrocortisone, but it has got 400 times more potency for the mineral corticoid effect because it is the primary mineral corticoid. So it is responsible to conserve sodium and water and maintains blood pressure. Similarly, fludrocortisone has got the potency of 400 times that of hydrocortisone as a mineral corticoid. So this is, you should remember. So how you are going to assess the patient? You need to know after starting the therapy that clinical well-being and restoration of normal but not excessive weight is the target. Patient was losing weight, patient had severe prostration, lack of appetite. So all these symptoms will be improved gradually. This will show that your treatment is working and patient has got a correct diagnosis. Sometimes we do normal cortisol levels during the daytime while the patient is on replacement to assess biochemically whether your replacement is sufficient. But once you have given hydrocortisone, you cannot do the cortisol level. So synthetic hydrocortisone or synthetic cortisol cannot be used for synthetic steroids. Or cortisol levels cannot be used for synthetic steroids. So remember that someone is taking synthetic steroids, then you will not do cortisol levels. But someone is on hydrocortisone, you can do cortisol levels. And if someone was started on a fludrocortisone replacement, then of course blood pressure is the target. Blood pressure should not be dropped to more than 10 millimeter of mercury systolic after patient is asked to stand for 2 minutes. So that means patient is maintaining blood pressure and there is no postural hypotension. Once you are giving fludrocortisone, also assess biochemically by doing serum electrolytes. So sodium should be corrected and potassium should go to normal levels. And suppression of plasma renin activity is sometimes also required. So you can do that also, which was initially high. So you need to counsel the patient that your replacement with corticosteroid is for life and you cannot quit your medication even in times of stress or any intercurrent illness. Someone has got flu or trauma or stress, any psychological stress even, they should increase their doses to double. And if someone is taking 10 milligram of hydrocortisone in the morning, they should double to 20 milligram. Someone is taking 5 milligram of hydrocortisone in the evening, they should double to 10 milligram. From 5 to 10 and from 10 to 20 milligram. And as long as they have the stress factor, they should keep the dose high for at least a couple of days or weeks, whatever the length of the intercurrent illness. So they should also carry some evidence that like steroid card. There's also medic alert bracelet available in higher centers and the hospitals provide. So they should keep at least a card that they are on steroid replacement for Addison disease. Because if they are found collapse somewhere, God forbid, so they can be provided medical aid immediately. They should keep hydrocortisone while at home, and they should this ampoule should be kept at home. Family should be able to inject, or the patient should learn. Family should learn how to inject immediately intramuscularly in case of any collapse or any emergency at family, at home. As I mentioned, there is primary Addison disease, which is actually a destruction of the adrenal gland primarily. In that case, ACTH will be higher. But sometimes what happens is that there is loss of ACTH from the anterior pituitary. And this is the secondary hypoadrenalism. And this occurs whether any tumor or any infiltration of the anterior pituitary, or in case of Sheehan syndrome. Hypopituitarism is a separate topic, and you will have that also, if not yet done. And another cause is long-term steroid therapy leading to hypothalamic pituitary adrenal suppression. Someone given steroid for other non-endocrine causes like rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory bowel disease or chronic asthma. So these patients are given steroids for a longer period of time, and then they need to be also checked for hypoadrenalism or adrenal suppression. So most people with hypothalamic pituitary disease have pan-hyperpituitarism and need thyroxine replacement as well, and along with corticosteroid. So anyone who has got suspicion of hypothyroidism, you are going to replace that person with thyroxine hormone and also cortisol. But to start with, if you are starting the treatment, always replace hydrocortisone first, then start thyroxine. Why is that? Because if you will replace thyroxine first and hydrocortisone later, actually thyroxine hormone stimulates liver enzyme P450. So this liver enzyme is going to catabolize and metabolize all the remaining endogenous cortisol, and the patient will end up with Addison crisis, which is a severe medical emergency. So remember that hydrocortisone should be given first, followed by the next day with thyroxine replacement. Long-term corticosteroid medication for non-endocrine disease, as I mentioned earlier, is the most common cause of secondary hypoadrenalism. The hypothalamic pituitary axis and the adrenal may both be suppressed, and the patient may have vague symptoms of feeling unwell. ACTH levels are low in secondary hypoadrenalism. Wearing of steroids is often long and difficult process. So someone on non-endocrine causes of taking long-term corticosteroids to taper off the glucocorticoid is a difficult process and need careful attention, because it can precipitate adrenal failure. So you need to gradually reduce the dose of corticosteroids while checking the patient vitals and weight, and of course other parameters that I mentioned earlier. So this is the end of my talk. I hope you have understood the topic. Thank you for your participation. Next time, inshallah, we have other topic. So see you soon. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.